Picture this. You're 28 years old, standing in your childhood bedroom, holding your wedding invitation in one hand and your phone in the other. Your dad's voice is crackling through the speaker, and he's telling you that your mom won't be coming to your wedding. Not because she's sick, not because there's some emergency, but because your younger sister scheduled her boyfriend's surprise birthday party on the exact same day, and apparently, that takes priority. The boyfriend's birthday isn't even for 3 months. I'm staring at this invitation, this beautiful piece of cardstock that represents the happiest day of my life, and all I can think is, of course, of fucking course. Because this isn't just about missing a wedding. This is the grand finale of 28 years of being the family afterthought. Hey viewers, welcome to the channel. We're just getting started, and your support means a lot. If you enjoy these stories, please consider subscribing and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Thanks for being here. Now back to the story. Let me back up and paint you the full picture of this absolute masterpiece of family dysfunction. Because trust me, this wedding drama is just the cherry on top of a very messed up sundae that's been sitting in the sun for nearly 3 decades. I've always been the black sheep in my family. Always. And before you ask, no, I don't know why. I wasn't the troublemaker. I wasn't the rebellious one. I wasn't even particularly difficult. I was just me. And apparently, that wasn't enough. Never was enough. Never would be enough. See, when I was born, my parents were struggling. Financially, emotionally, mentally. You name it, they were drowning in it. My mom had severe postpartum depression, and instead of getting help, instead of fighting through it together, they made a decision that would basically define the next 28 years of my life. They gave me away. Not permanently, they said. Just temporarily. Just until they got back on their feet. They handed their newborn baby to my aunt and uncle like I was a library book they'd return when convenient. For 6 years, 6 entire years, I lived with my aunt and uncle thinking they were my parents. Can you imagine? I was this happy, secure little kid, totally oblivious to the fact that my entire world was built on what was essentially a very long babysitting arrangement. I had my own room, painted yellow with little ducks on the wallpaper. I had toys and books and a guitar they bought me for my 5th birthday. I had bedtime stories and morning pancakes, and 2 people who looked at me like I was the center of their universe. Meanwhile, my actual parents were 50 miles away, raising my sister Elaine, giving her everything I thought I had. The real deal. The permanent arrangement. The unconditional love I was borrowing. Then came the visits. These confusing, heart-wrenching visits where these people would show up claiming to be my real parents. They'd play with me for a few hours, tell me stories about this other life I was supposed to have, and then leave, taking Elaine with them. Every single time. I remember standing at the window, watching their car pull away, holding my sister's hand through the back window and thinking, when do I get to go with them? The answer, it turned out, was when I turned 6. And let me tell you, coming home was nothing like the fairy tale I'd imagined. First culture shock. I had to share a room with Elaine. There was a perfectly good spare bedroom. I'd seen it during those visits, filled with storage and random junk. But no, we needed to bond as sisters. Because nothing says bonding like forcing 2 kids who barely know each other into the same space and expecting magic to happen. Elaine, who had enjoyed 6 years of being an only child with her own space, her own parents, her own everything, was absolutely thrilled about this arrangement. And by thrilled, I mean she made my life absolutely miserable from day one. Everything I did annoyed her. I played too loudly with the toys my aunt and uncle had packed for me. I read too much. Apparently, I was showing off by actually enjoying books. My books were stupid anyway, she'd tell me. My guitar playing was awful and hurt her ears. Even the way I organized my toys was apparently wrong, too neat, too particular, too weird. This kid had a criticism for everything I touched, breathed on, or existed near. She'd mock the way I talked, the way I brushed my teeth, the way I folded my clothes. When I'd get excited about something at school and want to share it, she'd roll her eyes and call me the teacher's pet. When I'd practice guitar, something I'd loved doing at my aunt and uncle's house, she'd tell me I sounded like a dying cat and should give up. And here's the kicker. When I'd run to my parents crying because my sister was being mean to me, you know what they'd say? Stop crying and toughen up. Stand up to your sister. Don't come running to us every time you have a problem. Can you imagine being 6 years old, torn away from the only parents you've ever known, thrown into a room with a hostile roommate who resents your very existence, and then being told you're the problem when you ask for help, when you're confused and hurt and just want someone to tell you it's going to be okay. I started changing everything about myself. Stopped reading at home. I'd sneak books at school instead, reading during lunch and recess because God forbid I enjoy something that might annoy Elaine. Put away the guitar my aunt and uncle had bought me, the one that had brought me so much joy. Tried to mold myself into whatever might make Elaine accept me, make my parents proud of me, make me belong in this family I'd been dropped into. Spoiler alert, nothing worked. The more I changed, the more ammunition she had. The quieter I became, the more she'd push. It was like she could smell my desperation to fit in, and it made her crueler. When I hit my teens and developed acne, like literally every teenager on the planet, Elaine would tell me how disgusting I looked. "Your face is so gross," she'd say, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "How can you even look in the mirror?" When I'd cry about it, when I'd run to our parents devastated and seeking some comfort, Mom would tell me to stop being so sensitive, to develop thicker skin. Dad would disappear entirely whenever there was conflict. He'd suddenly remember he had work to do, errands to run, anywhere to be that wasn't dealing with his daughter's problems. It was like living in a house where 3 people belonged and one person was just tolerated, an inconvenient guest who'd overstayed their welcome. The pattern continued through high school, and honestly, it got worse. Elaine was popular. She was pretty outgoing, had this natural charisma that drew people to her. I was not. I was awkward, bookish, still trying to figure out who I was supposed to be in this family that never quite felt like home. She'd spread rumors about me to sabotage any friendships I managed to make. She'd tell people I was weird, that I thought I was better than everyone because I read so much, that I was adopted because my real parents didn't want me. When I'd confront her about the lies, she'd run to our parents, tears in her eyes, claiming I was being mean to her. And somehow, I'd be the one getting scolded. "Why can't you just get along with your sister?" Mom would ask, like I was the instigator, like I was the one making everyone's life difficult. But the moment that really crystallized everything for me, the moment that made me realize exactly where I stood in this family's hierarchy, was my high school graduation. I had worked my ass off for 4 years. I was graduating with honors, had gotten into a good college, had scholarship offers. I desperately wanted my parents there, proud of me for once in my life, celebrating something I'd actually accomplished. 3 days before the ceremony, Mom casually mentions, and I mean casually like she's commenting on the weather, that Elaine has a dance recital the same day. Now, let me be clear. These events were hours apart. My graduation was in the afternoon. Her recital was in the evening. There was no scheduling conflict. None. But Elaine wanted them at her full dress rehearsal, and according to Mom, she needed them more. She needed them more. For a dress rehearsal, while I was graduating with honors. Fine, I thought. I can handle this. I resigned myself to having just Dad there. One parent was better than none, right? At least someone from my family would witness this milestone, would see me walk across that stage and accept my diploma. Wrong. So incredibly, devastatingly wrong. The day of my graduation, I'm sitting there in my cap and gown, scanning the audience for my dad's familiar face. He's not there. The ceremony starts, and he's still not there. Other families are taking pictures, hugging their graduates, and I'm sitting alone checking my phone, thinking maybe he's just running late. When they call my name and I walk across that stage to get my diploma, this moment I'd dreamed about, worked toward for 4 years, I'm looking out at a sea of strangers. Not one familiar face. Not one person there for me. I find out later what happened. Mom called Dad in a panic about 30 minutes before my graduation started. Elaine was having a panic attack before her rehearsal and needed him there to calm her down. So he chose. He had to make a choice between his 2 daughters, and he chose Elaine. He chose to rush to her side instead of coming to see his other daughter graduate. I came home to an empty house. They were all still out celebrating Elaine's successful rehearsal, probably getting dinner somewhere nice, probably talking about how proud they were of her performance. When they finally came back around 10 that night, they were jubilant, hugging her, praising her like she'd just won an Oscar. Not one apology for missing my graduation. Not even an acknowledgement that it had happened. Not a "how did it go?" or "we're sorry we missed it." Nothing. That was my turning point. That was the moment I realized I could stop hoping they'd change, Stopped believing that if I just tried harder or achieved more or became more impressive, they'd finally see me. I stopped expecting anything from them. Stopped telling them about my achievements, my dreams, my problems. Stopped asking for their support or approval. The only people who celebrated me were my aunt and uncle. They sent flowers, called to congratulate me, wanted to hear every detail about the ceremony. Their words meant more to me than any recognition from my parents ever could, because they actually cared. They actually saw me as a person worth celebrating. When Elaine graduated high school a year later and got into a prestigious university, my parents threw her a huge party. And I mean huge. They rented a hall, invited extended family, had catering, made speeches. They were bursting with pride, bragging to everyone about her achievements, making it this massive celebration of their daughter's success. I congratulated her because, despite everything, I was genuinely happy for her. She'd worked hard, and she deserved to be celebrated. I just wished I'd gotten the same treatment. A year later, I graduated college with a computer science degree and a job offer from a top tech company. This was huge for me. I'd worked through college, maintained a high GPA, and landed a position that would set me up for a successful career. My parents' reaction? Absolutely nothing. Not even a congratulations text. Radio silence. My aunt and uncle, bless them, decided to throw me a party. They were so proud, so excited about my achievements, and they wanted to celebrate me properly. Word spread to other relatives and some of my friends, and it turned into this beautiful celebration of my accomplishment. People kept saying how proud they were of me, how impressed they were with what I'd achieved. But my parents, they complained. They said it was over the top and that I didn't deserve such a lavish celebration, especially when they hadn't done the same for Elaine when she started college. My mom actually said, and I'm quoting here, "Elaine is going to feel really bad when she finds out you're getting a party, especially since we only gave her a gift card when she graduated high school." A gift card for graduating high school, while I was getting a party for graduating college with honors and landing a dream job. The logic was stunning. My aunt, who had been quietly listening to this bullshit, finally lost it. She laid into my mother with a fury I'd never seen before. "We always have to step in and celebrate her because you never do," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "You enthusiastically celebrate Elaine's achievements, but seem completely indifferent to hers. Do you have any idea how that makes her feel?" My uncle backed her up, asking why there was such a clear double standard in how they treated their children's successes. My parents had no real answer except that it was challenging to balance celebrations for two children, and their focus had naturally been on Elaine's milestones since she was the youngest. Naturally. Right. Because being younger somehow makes your achievements more worthy of celebration than your older sisters. My mother further justified her position by saying that just because they didn't celebrate me enough didn't mean they didn't love me. Love. Like love was supposed to be this abstract feeling that never translated into actions or support or basic acknowledgement of your child's existence. Thankfully, my aunt and uncle were not convinced by this pathetic excuse. My uncle argued back passionately that being parents meant being there for both children, not just one. He criticized my parents for not treating me with the same enthusiasm and support they always showed Elaine. In the end, my parents had no argument to stand on, so I did get my party. And it was wonderful, filled with people who actually cared about me and wanted to celebrate my success. I had invited Elaine, hoping maybe this could be a moment for us to connect as sisters. She told me she was too busy with college preparations to attend a silly little party. Silly little party. For graduating college. The casual cruelty was breathtaking. This pattern continued into adulthood, and if anything, it got more sophisticated. When I started dating Jake, suddenly family gatherings were too crowded if he came too. But Elaine's boyfriend? Always welcome, always included, always treated like part of the family from day one. Jake, who's a successful software engineer with impressive academic achievements, was constantly criticized by my parents. They'd make little comments about his career being too demanding or question whether he'd have time for family. Meanwhile, Elaine's boyfriend, who had dropped out of college and was still figuring out his path at 26, was never questioned or judged in the same way. Mom once told me she would have preferred I find someone more family-oriented instead of someone so career-driven. She suggested Jake wouldn't be a good father because he was too focused on work. This, coming from the woman who shipped me off to relatives for 6 years and then spent the next 22 treating me like an inconvenience she had to tolerate. The irony was stunning. Jake was the most caring, supportive person I'd ever met. He listened to me, celebrated my achievements, made me feel valued and loved in ways my family never had. But because he had the audacity to be successful and ambitious, he was somehow deficient. I started declining invitations to family dinners and holiday events to avoid subjecting Jake to their subtle hostility and judgment. My absence didn't seem to have much impact on them. If anything, it made the gatherings more comfortable for everyone else. 6 months ago, Jake proposed to me, and I said yes without a moment's hesitation. This man has given me more love, support, and genuine care in our relationship than my family had provided in 28 years. He makes me feel seen, valued, cherished. All the things I'd spent my childhood desperately craving from my parents. When I told my parents about the engagement, Dad seemed genuinely happy for me. He congratulated me, asked about our plans, seemed excited about the idea of a wedding. Mom was silent during the conversation, and I could feel her disapproval radiating through the phone. Later that evening, she texted me a long message expressing her disappointment that I hadn't listened to her concerns about Jake and had gone ahead with the engagement anyway. She said that as a woman, she knew other women better, and she felt Jake would not be a good fit for our family. She was worried about our future, concerned about my choice, disappointed in my decision. I was taken aback by the bluntness of her criticism. I called her back and asked her to stop, told her I was tired of her constantly bringing down my relationship. I asked her point-blank if she had any legitimate reason for her dislike of Jake, any specific behavior or action that concerned her, or if this was just unfounded prejudice. Her response will stay with me forever. She said, and I'm quoting directly, "Jake constantly challenges my opinions, unlike Elaine's boyfriend." There it was. The truth laid bare. She didn't like Jake because he wouldn't let her walk all over him. When she'd try to subtly mock his career choice or question his views during family gatherings, Jake wouldn't just nod and smile. He'd politely but firmly push back. He'd defend himself and his choices. He'd refuse to be diminished. This is one of the things I admire most about Jake. He has self-respect. He stands up for himself. He's aware of our family's history, and unlike me, he doesn't hesitate to assert himself when someone tries to treat him poorly. He's never been outright disrespectful. His responses are always polite but firm. He just refuses to be a doormat. I told Mom that I didn't think what Jake did was wrong in any way, and that I actually wished I was more assertive like him. I wished I had his confidence, his ability to stand up for himself instead of just accepting whatever treatment people dished out. Her response? Jake was a bad influence and was changing me too much. Like becoming more confident and self-assured was somehow a character flaw. Good, I thought. Maybe I needed to change. Maybe I needed to stop accepting scraps of affection from people who should have loved me unconditionally. Maybe I needed to learn that I deserved better. I paid little attention to Mom's criticisms and continued enthusiastically planning my wedding with Jake. We were excited, happy, in love. We found the perfect venue, chose flowers, tasted cakes, sent save the dates. It felt like the beginning of my real life, the life I was choosing for myself. 2 months ago, I sent out wedding invitations to everyone, including Elaine. Despite not receiving congratulations from her after the engagement announcement, despite years of tension between us, I still harbored no ill feelings. She was my sister, and I wanted her there on my special day. I hoped maybe this could be a turning point for us. Elaine declined the invitation without any explanation. Just a simple no on the response card. No reason given, no phone call, no conversation. Just rejection. That disappointed me, but what truly caught me off guard was the phone call from Dad a few days later. He told me that while he would be attending my wedding, Mom had decided not to come. I was stunned. I knew Mom had reservations about Jake, but I had hoped that for the sake of our family, for the sake of my happiness, she would set aside those differences and join us. This was my wedding day, supposedly one of the most important days of a person's life. I asked Dad why, though I think I already knew the answer would be something that would break my heart. He explained that Elaine had apparently planned a surprise birthday party for her boyfriend on the very same day as my wedding, and Mom was going to attend that instead. This revelation was bizarre for multiple reasons. First, I knew that Elaine's boyfriend's birthday was in March, and my wedding was in October. There was no reason to hold a birthday party 6 months away from someone's actual birthday. Second, even if there was some legitimate reason for the timing conflict, the fact that my mother would choose a boyfriend's birthday party over her daughter's wedding was breathtaking in its cruelty. Instead of confronting Mom directly, I needed to understand the full situation first. I decided to reach out to Elaine to clarify things. Although we didn't often speak anymore, I wanted to handle this with respect and dignity. I called her and asked straightforwardly about the birthday party and whether that was really the reason she wasn't planning to attend my wedding. To my surprise, Elaine confirmed that this was indeed the case. She explained that her boyfriend had always wanted a surprise party, and they had originally planned it for his actual birthday. But, she said, they didn't have enough money saved up at the time. So she had gone out of her way to make it up to him by working extra hours, saving money, and finding a special venue for their celebration that fit within their budget. Unfortunately, she claimed, the only available date for this venue happened to coincide with my wedding day. The only available date, in the entire calendar year, happened to be my wedding day. I expressed my disappointment and gently suggested that she could have chosen a different date, emphasizing just how much I would have appreciated her presence at my wedding. I told her how important it was to me to have my family there, how much it would mean to have my sister by my side. Her response was like a knife to the heart. She said that her boyfriend's happiness came above everything else, and she made it clear that she wasn't willing to change their party date just to accommodate my wedding plans. Her boyfriend's happiness, above everything else, including her sister's wedding. She didn't even wait for me to reply before hanging up the phone. Later, when I called Mom to discuss the situation, she resorted to the same age-old explanation she'd been using my entire life. She insisted that Elaine would feel hurt if she didn't attend her boyfriend's party. She reiterated that Dad was already planning to attend my wedding, so I shouldn't be selfish and expect her to come as well. Selfish, for wanting my mother at my wedding. I told her, my voice almost breaking with emotion, just how painful it was for me to constantly feel like she treated me as inferior compared to my sister. I explained to her that this wasn't just about one day. It was about a lifetime of feeling like I came second, like my milestones didn't matter, like my happiness was less important than Elaine's. My mother scoffed at my words and told me that I should not be so overdramatic about my wedding. Overdramatic. About my wedding, the day I was marrying the love of my life. I told her she could do as she wished, but I was no longer going to acknowledge her as a parent after this. She laughed, actually laughed, and called me overdramatic again before hanging up. Jake and I had our wedding, and despite everything, it was beautiful. It was everything we'd dreamed of and more. The venue was perfect, the flowers were gorgeous, our friends and chosen family surrounded us with love and support. Dad kept his promise and was there, walking me down the aisle with tears in his eyes. My aunt and uncle were there, beaming with pride, love and support radiating from them like it always had. But Mom, she was at Elaine's boyfriend's fake birthday party, dancing and drinking like she didn't have a care in the world. The pictures Elaine posted on social media made it clear they were flaunting their disregard for my feelings. It wasn't just about missing the wedding anymore. It was about the casual cruelty of making sure I knew exactly where their priorities lay. Mom looked happy, carefree, like she hadn't just missed one of the most important days of her daughter's life. What made it worse was that Mom never once called Jake or me throughout the entire day. Not to check how things went, not to congratulate us, not even to acknowledge that the wedding had happened. Radio silence. After the wedding, my aunt and uncle didn't hesitate to confront Mom about her absence. They didn't hold back, and they didn't mince words. They told her they were fed up with how she'd treated me over the years, that they'd given her more than enough chances to be a good mother. But she clearly only cared about Elaine. They went as far as to threaten her with consequences, including potentially removing her from their will. They told her they would make sure that I got every penny of their inheritance, since I deserved it more than she did. This was huge. My aunt and uncle weren't wealthy by any means, but they had a modest inheritance that would have been split between my parents and me. The fact that they were willing to cut my mother out entirely was a powerful statement about how disgusted they were with her behavior. Suddenly, missing my wedding became a fiasco. Suddenly, Mom was calling me, pleading for forgiveness. But not because she realized she'd hurt me. Not because she understood the pain she'd caused. Because she might lose money. During our brief conversation, She expressed disbelief at how missing my wedding had escalated into such a serious situation. She claimed it was unfair that I might receive my aunt and uncle's inheritance instead of her. She urged me to persuade them not to proceed with any decisions related to their estate. She was more concerned about inheriting money than fixing our strained relationship. I didn't engage in much conversation with her because Jake and I were on our honeymoon, and I wanted to preserve the joy and peace of that time. But when we returned, she started calling me almost every day, pleading for another chance to make things right between us. Her solution? Jake and I should have another wedding ceremony, this time with just close family members, so she could attend. She expressed regret over missing the wedding and insisted I should give her an opportunity to remedy the situation. Let me get this straight. I should plan my wedding twice to accommodate someone who couldn't be bothered to show up the first time? I should spend more money, more time, more emotional energy so that my mother could get a do-over for her own poor choices? Out of nowhere, Elaine sent me a text message that was almost insulting in its audacity. She said I shouldn't have involved our aunt and uncle in our private matters, and that Mom was really afraid of losing her inheritance. She suggested that for the sake of family peace, I should stage another wedding just to make Mom feel better. For the sake of Mom, the woman who had missed my graduation, my college celebration, my engagement, and my wedding. I should inconvenience myself again for her sake. I talked to Jake about the whole situation, and he was understandably upset about how my family had treated us, especially on our wedding day. He agreed that having another wedding would be unnecessary and potentially harmful to our emotional well-being. Jake believed I should stand up to my mom and tell her that she had her chance to attend our original wedding, but she chose not to, so now she had to deal with the consequences of her actions. So I called Mom and had a long, honest conversation with her. I told her that I appreciated her apology, but I wasn't willing to have another wedding ceremony just to appease her. I explained that her absence at my wedding wasn't just about missing one day. It was the culmination of years of favoritism, neglect, and emotional abandonment. Mom tried to defend herself, saying she always loved me, but found it difficult to connect with me after I lived with my aunt and uncle for so long. She claimed that she felt like she didn't know how to be a mother to me, and that's why she gravitated toward Elaine. She said it was easier with Elaine because she'd been there from the beginning. I told her that while I could understand her struggle, it didn't excuse her behavior over the years. I also addressed the inheritance issue head-on. I made it clear that I had no intention of influencing my aunt and uncle's decision about their will. I told her that their choice was their own, and if she wanted to change their minds, she needed to speak to them directly and work on repairing her relationship with them. The conversation ended with Mom in tears, begging me to reconsider. I stood my ground and told her that while I was open to working on our relationship in the future, I needed time and space to heal. I also made it clear that any reconciliation would need to include genuine acknowledgement of past hurts and a real effort to change. Then something completely unexpected happened. A few days later, Elaine called and asked to meet up. This was shocking because we hadn't had a one-on-one conversation in probably 2 years. Curious about what she had to say, I agreed to meet her at a local cafe. When we met, Elaine seemed nervous and uncomfortable, fidgeting with her coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. She started by apologizing for missing my wedding and for her behavior over the years. She admitted that she had always been jealous of the close relationship I had with our aunt and uncle and felt like she had to compete for our parents' attention. Then she dropped a bombshell that I never saw coming. She revealed that she and her boyfriend had broken up shortly after his surprise party. Apparently, the stress of planning the party, combined with the guilt of missing my wedding, had put a significant strain on their relationship. He had started questioning her priorities and her treatment of her family, and ultimately decided he didn't want to be with someone who would prioritize a party over her sister's wedding. She confessed that she regretted prioritizing the party over my wedding and wished she could turn back time. For the first time in years, I saw genuine vulnerability in my sister. She looked broken, exhausted, like she'd been carrying around this guilt and regret for months. We ended up talking for hours, sharing our perspectives on our childhood and our complicated relationship with our parents. Elaine admitted that she had often felt pressured by Mom to be perfect, to be the golden child, and that she resented me for seemingly having an escape with our aunt and uncle. She said she'd always felt like she had to prove herself worthy of the favoritism she received. She also revealed something that shocked me. She said she'd always been aware of the unfair treatment I received, but she'd been too scared to speak up because she was afraid of losing her position as the favorite. She was afraid that if she defended me, our parents might start treating her the way they treated me. This conversation didn't erase years of hurt and resentment, but it felt like a genuine step in the right direction. We agreed to work on our relationship and to be more open and honest with each other moving forward. For the first time since childhood, I felt like I was talking to my actual sister, not some competitive stranger who shared my DNA. But just as things seemed to be looking up with Elaine, I received some troubling news from my aunt and uncle. They called to inform me that Mom had shown up at their house unannounced, demanding to know why they were planning to leave their inheritance to me instead of her. According to my aunt, Mom had been aggressive and accusatory, claiming they were trying to buy my love and loyalty with money. She accused them of interfering in family matters and trying to turn me against my parents. She even went so far as to threaten to contest the will if they went through with their plan. My aunt and uncle were upset by Mom's behavior and her accusations. They reassured me that their decision about their estate was based on their love for me and their disapproval of how my parents had treated me over the years. They said they'd watched me grow up feeling unloved and undervalued, and they wanted to make sure I knew that at least some family members saw my worth. This situation created a new layer of tension in the family. I felt guilty that my aunt and uncle were facing such stress because of me, even though I knew it wasn't really my fault. I was also worried about how this might affect my budding reconciliation with Elaine. Jake suggested we take a short trip away to clear our heads and get some perspective on the situation. We spent a week at a quiet beach resort, and it was exactly what we needed. Time to relax, reconnect, and gain some distance from all the family drama. But our peace was interrupted by a call from Dad. His voice was shaky and worried as he told me that Mom had suffered a minor heart attack. She was stable and recovering in the hospital, but the doctors had advised her to avoid stress and get plenty of rest. Despite my complicated feelings toward Mom, despite all the hurt and resentment I carried, I felt worried and guilty. What if something happened to her before we could resolve things? What if she died thinking I hated her? Jake and I cut our trip short and returned home immediately. When we arrived at the hospital, I found Elaine already there, looking exhausted and worried. To my surprise, my aunt and uncle were also present. They explained that despite their recent conflicts with Mom, they couldn't stay away when they heard about her health scare. Their presence seemed to have a calming effect on everyone. When I entered Mom's hospital room, I was struck by how small and vulnerable she looked lying in that bed. The woman who had loomed so large in my life, who had caused me so much pain and confusion, looked fragile and afraid. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw me, and she reached out to hold my hand. For the first time in years, I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. Mom began to speak, her voice weak but determined. She apologized for her behavior over the years, admitting that she had let her insecurities and fears drive a wedge between us. She confessed that she had always felt inadequate as a mother, especially after giving me to my aunt and uncle for those crucial early years. She said that when I came back home, she didn't know how to connect with me. I seemed so different from Elaine, so independent and self-sufficient, and she interpreted that as rejection. Instead of working to overcome those feelings and build a relationship with me, she had channeled all her maternal energy into Elaine, creating an unhealthy dynamic that had poisoned our family for decades. What she said next shocked me to my core. Mom revealed that she had been seeing a therapist for the past month, trying to work through her issues and understand why she had treated me the way she did. She said that missing my wedding had been a wake-up call, forcing her to confront the reality of what she'd done to our relationship. Her heart attack, she said, had made her realize that she needed to make things right before it was too late. She was terrified that she might die with this unresolved between us, with me thinking she didn't love me. Elaine, who had been listening silently from the corner of the room, suddenly burst into tears. She apologized for her role in the family dysfunction, admitting that she had often taken advantage of Mom's favoritism instead of standing up for me. She expressed deep regret for missing my wedding and for not being a better sister over the years. As we talked, years of pent-up emotions came pouring out. There were tears, accusations, and painful truths shared. But for the first time in decades, it felt like we were all truly listening to each other, really hearing what the others were saying instead of just waiting for our turn to defend ourselves. In the midst of this emotional conversation, my aunt and uncle joined us in the hospital room. They shared their perspective on the situation, explaining why they had made the decision about their will. They emphasized that it wasn't about playing favorites or trying to manipulate anyone. It was about trying to right what they saw as years of him.